Lena had always known the weight her family name carried. As the youngest daughter of the Solano family, her life had been mapped out in quiet, suffocating luxury. Kai, on the other hand, belonged to the D'Amicos, rivals in business and blood. Where the Solanos owned influence, the D'Amicos commanded fear. The hatred between them ran so deep, even the streets in town seemed to divide at their names. But fate doesn't ask for permission. Their first meeting was an accident, or maybe something more. Lena had slipped away from a family gathering, desperate for silence, and found herself by the cove. Kai was already there, sketching words in a leather notebook, his solitude as intentional as hers. Neither spoke at first, two strangers tethered by stillness. Then a word, a question, a laugh. It was enough. Something sparked, quiet and powerful. They parted without names, but returned the next evening. And the next. As the weeks unfolded, the connection became undeniable. Lena found in Kai what her world lacked: raw honesty, unfiltered dreams. Kai found in her a gentleness that didn't ask for explanation. They shared their scars in whispers and laughter, their fears laid bare under twilight. Every stolen moment wrapped them tighter in a promise neither dared voice. They were falling in love. But love didn't change the facts. Their families would never allow it. Still, they chose each other in the silence. Lena began writing him letters, careful and coded. Kai wrote poems in return, hiding them beneath stones by the cove. They existed in this fragile in-between, where glances meant more than words, and a brush of fingers felt like rebellion. It was the kind of love that dared to bloom in shadow, reckless and naive. Neither spoke of tomorrow. They didn't need to. The present was enough. Or so they thought. Then came the moment they couldn't ignore. Lena's father arranged a match. Enzo, a distant cousin raised on tradition and ambition. She didn't say no. She didn't say anything. She just kept meeting Kai at dusk, hoping love could somehow delay the inevitable. But time, like secrets, always runs out. On their final night before her engagement was to be announced, they stood by the water, the sky bleeding orange behind them. Kai took her hand and said the words neither had dared to say aloud: "Run away with me." Lena hesitated. Not because she didn't love him, but because the world she came from wouldn't let her go easily. She looked away. That silence, that small pause, was all it took to plant the first crack. She kissed him that night like it was a promise. But something had already shifted. They didn't know it yet, but the ending had already begun. The air grew heavier as Lena's engagement to Enzo became public. Her parents beamed with pride, and the town whispered approvingly. On the surface, she played the role expected of her: graceful, agreeable, silent. But her heart was never in it. Every smile she offered Enzo felt like betrayal. Every touch, a lie. Yet, she said nothing, and by saying nothing, allowed everything. She still met Kai in secret, though now every meeting felt like stealing time from something already lost. He noticed the change in her, the flicker of guilt in her eyes, the way her laughter faltered. When he asked if she was happy, she lied. When he asked if she'd changed her mind, she said no. But hesitation clung to her like fog. She couldn't give him an answer he trusted, and yet she begged him to stay. Enzo, unaware of the truth, grew closer. He spoke of a future together, of power and legacy. Lena nodded, said the right words, and went home to read Kai's letters by candlelight. The contradiction tore at her. Her love was real, but so was her silence. She didn't want to hurt either man, but in trying to protect them, she deceived them both. Kai began to unravel. He couldn't understand why she wouldn't choose. Every time she promised it would work out, he felt the walls close in tighter. He felt like a ghost in her life, a secret she refused to claim. His poems changed to darker, laced with longing and fear. In one, he wrote, "A love without a name is a wound that cannot heal." She read it and cried, but didn't answer. The pressure mounted. Lena's wedding date was whispered in her home. Her dress was being sewn. Her family celebrated. Still, she ran to Kai at night, whispered that she loved him, told him not to give up. And he listened, because he wanted to believe. But a part of him started to doubt, was she in love, or just afraid to be alone? Her betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't come with cruelty or intent. It came in quiet choices every time she didn't speak, didn't fight, didn't choose him completely. And that, in its own way, hurt more than any lie. Kai wasn't just being kept in the dark, he was being kept in a dream she no longer had the courage to make real. The last time he saw her before everything collapsed, she held his face and whispered, "Trust me." He nodded, but something in him had already cracked. He left without looking back, walking away with the sinking realization that love without action was nothing more than a beautiful cage. The truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it's buried. Enzo, once merely suspicious, became certain. Lena's late-night walks, her distant gaze, the flickers of sorrow she tried to hide, it was all too telling. He followed her one night, unseen, unnoticed. And what he saw confirmed everything. She wasn't his fiancée in spirit, only in title. Her heart already belonged to someone else. At the same time, Kai's sister found one of Lena's letters tucked inside his notebook. She recognized the handwriting immediately and confronted him with a fury born from loyalty. She warned him this wouldn't end quietly. He didn't argue. He knew. But he couldn't let go. Word spread fast. The Solanos were humiliated, the D'Amicos enraged. Each family blamed the other, as if love were a tactic of war. Lena was locked inside her home, forbidden from speaking to anyone outside. Kai was beaten by his brother, reminded that loyalty mattered more than love. The feud reignited with a new intensity, not over business or territory this time, but over hearts and pride. Still, they reached for each other. Through notes slipped between doors, whispers exchanged through allies, they planned a final escape. One chance, one night, to disappear together and leave it all behind. Hope burned bright again, even as everything else crumbled. But hope wasn't enough to outrun consequences. That night, when they met for the last time, they weren't alone. Enzo followed, flanked by Kai's brother, both armed not with weapons, but with wounded pride. Words turned sharp. Accusations flew like daggers. Lena tried to explain, to stop the storm, but no one was listening. Enzo lunged first, not at Lena, but at Kai. Rage blinded him. He couldn't stand the humiliation. A push, a stumble, and Kai's body hit the rocks with a sickening crack. Time stopped. Lena screamed his name, rushing to him, but blood already stained the stone. Her world split open, the future she'd clung to torn apart in one violent moment. Kai didn't move. The silence that followed was more brutal than the fight. Enzo stared at what he'd done, his breathing ragged. Kai's brother pulled him back. Lena was dragged away, kicking, sobbing, her voice hoarse from screaming. She reached for Kai, but there was no reaching far enough to undo what had been done. In a single instant, every secret, every lie, every moment of hesitation crashed down. Love had been a spark, but betrayal had set the fire. The cost was finally clear. And it was far more than either of them had ever imagined. Kai survived, but not as the boy he once was. He disappeared from the town without a word, carried away by those who still cared enough to spare him from more pain. No one knew where he went. No one dared to ask. The D'Amicos called it a disgrace. The Solanos called it handled. Lena called it the end of everything. She married Enzo weeks later. There was no joy in it, just expectation. Her vows were spoken with a hollow voice. Her eyes, once bright with dreams, dimmed with regret. Every day with Enzo felt like a punishment she chose. He never spoke of that night, never mentioned Kai. But the silence between them was louder than any confession. Years passed. The town moved on. The feud cooled but never died. Families grew richer, quieter, colder. Lena walked through her days like a shadow, her life a routine of obligation. But each evening, she returned to the cove, the only place untouched by lies. She read the old letters, clutched the worn pages of Kai's poems, and wondered what might have been if she had run when he asked. Then one day, a letter came. No return name, just a delicate fold and a single page. The handwriting was familiar, sharp, slanted, alive. The poem was titled The Girl Who Dances with Fire. The same name he had once used, long ago. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was goodbye. In it, he wrote of love that burns and consumes, of choices made too late, of forgiveness offered not for her, but for himself. He wished her peace, but not happiness. He couldn't give her that anymore. The last line read, "Some flames were meant to light the way. Others, to remind us of what we lost when we stood still." She read it over and over until the ink blurred. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Her heart had learned to ache without breaking. That night, she sat by the sea and whispered his name into the wind, knowing no one would answer. Lena never left the town. She lived out her days as a wife, a daughter, a name in a powerful family. But inside, she remained the girl who didn't run. The girl who watched love slip away because fear spoke louder than her heart. In the end, it wasn't the feud that ruined them. Not the families. Not even Enzo. It was the silence. The waiting. The refusal to leap when love asked for faith. And that was the real betrayal, choosing safety over truth. And paying for it with a lifetime of almosts.